Hello everyone. 2009 election and UPA back in power. The country went to the polls in April-May 2009 to elect the 15th Lok Sabha. Posters for the Congress campaign showed three faces, those of Manmohan Singh, Sonia Gandhi party president and her son Rahul Gandhi, who had become the general secretary of the party in 2007, confirming the whole of the first family and the dynastic trend in the party. The main opposition party, the BJP, projected LK Advani as the prime ministerial candidate. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was not keeping well by this time. Several regional parties too were in the fray, some of them allied with the BJP and some ready to support the Congress if the occasion demanded. The election results showed that the Congress was able to increase its tally of seats, though it could not get a majority on its own. The reasons for the endorsement probably were that the middle classes were satisfied with the economy, which was doing quite well, and they favored the nuclear deal with the US. The welfare schemes initiated by the government at the behest of the NAC under Sonia Gandhi appealed to many in the rural sector, especially the women and the underprivileged, and had begun to show positive results, and Rahul Gandhi was expected to and probably did appeal to the younger voters. The UPA was once again in a position to form the government. Manmohan Singh was sworn in as the Prime Minister on May 22nd. As per norms, he had submitted his resignation on May 18 to President Pradeepa Patil. Manmohan Singh thus became the first Prime Minister since Jawaharlal Nehru in 1962 to be re-elected after completing a full term. Telangana issue. The second term of the UPA government was marked by the agitation for a separate state for Telangana. Before the 2004 elections, the Congress had allied with the Telangana Rashtra Samiti (TRS) and promised to create a separate state of Telangana out of Andhra Pradesh if it came to power at the center. The Congress did very well in Andhra Pradesh in the 2009 elections, but the chief architect of the victory, YSR Reddy, who was the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, was totally opposed to the bifurcation of the state. In the circumstances, the Congress government, now in power at the centre, went back on its promise on Telangana. Also ignored was another promise that a fresh states reorganization committee would be formed to divide up some of the largest states. This was because the left, without whose support the government would not have survived, was strongly opposed to the idea. YSR Reddy died in an air crash, and the agitation for Telangana got a fresh lease of life, with the movement being led by K. Chandrasekhara Rao (KCR). In November 2009, KCR went on a fast unto death in the cause of Telangana as a separate state. Life in Hyderabad was badly disrupted, with KCR's supporters coming out in thousands to protest. The government at the center gave in and in December 2009 announced that the process to form the state was being initiated. The decision caused much resentment among the Congress MPs from coastal Andhra, but it had to be accepted in the end. The center appointed a commission headed by a retired judge of the Supreme Court, B.N. Sri Krishna, to look into the matter of bifurcation. The commission submitted its report in December 2010, but it was rejected by the TRS. After much negotiation, Parliament cleared the Telangana bill in February 2014. As per the Act, Andhra Pradesh was formally divided to form the new state of Telangana. While the two states were to share Hyderabad as capital for 10 years, the center was to provide funds to Andhra Pradesh, also Seemandhra, to build a new capital. It was only in June 2014, after a new government took over at the center, that the Telangana actually came into existence, with KCR as the chief minister. Incidentally, in May 2011, there was a historic development on the state government level. West Bengal, where the Left Front had ruled without break since 1977, itself constituting a record, decided to switch allegiance and to put the Trinamool Congress (TMC) in power. Mamta Banerjee, who had once been in the Congress but had broken away to form and lead the TMC, became the new Chief Minister of the state. Social welfare measures and legislations. The UPA government brought in some important social welfare measures in its second term. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, also known as the RTE Act, came into being in 2009. The Constitution 86th Amendment Act 2002 had already inserted Article 21A in the Constitution of India to provide free and compulsory education to all children in the age group of 6 to 14 years as a fundamental right in such a manner as the state may by law determine. The RTE Act 2009 put in place what is envisaged under the Article 221A. It means that every child has a right to full-time elementary education of satisfactory and equitable equality in a formal school which satisfies certain essential norms and standards. All private schools except those recognized as minority educational institutions are required to enroll children from weaker sections and disadvantaged communities in their incoming class to the extent of 25% of the school enrollment through the means of simple random selection. These children are to be treated on par with other children in the school, but they will be subsidized by the state. Article 21A along with the RTE Act came into effect on April 1, 2010. An attempt was made to get the bill on reserving 33% of seats in the union and state legislatures passed. The bill was introduced in the Rajya Sabha, but the government was compelled to shelve it as its own allies, especially the Rashtriya Janata Dal, refused to support it. The government was in a way forced to formulate the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 to deal with sexual offences against women. One night in December 2012, a horrific gang rape of a young woman took place in Delhi. Jyoti Singh, accompanied by her friend, got onto a private bus which had some other men in it. These men, one of whom was a juvenile, with the collision of the driver and the conductor, brutally raped and tortured the woman and beat up the young man accompanying her as the bus travelled around, even passing police checkposts. In the end, the woman and her friend were thrown out onto the roadside. They were found by a passerby who notified the police, and the victims were taken to hospital. Doctors could not save Jyoti. According to police reports, Jyoti had bravely attempted to fight off her attackers. Hence, she came to be called Nirbhaya in the media, as the real name of the rape victim could not be published. Her real name was later revealed openly by her mother. The police were quick to arrest the 6 culprits. In March 2014, the Delhi High Court found all the defendants guilty of rape, murder, unnatural offences, and destruction of evidence. The High Court confirmed the death sentence for all 4 men convicted either. The juvenile was tried under a different law and escaped with a few years in prison, and one of the accused died in jail. The case went in appeal to the Supreme Court. It was not till 2018 that the case was finally settled. In May 2017, the Supreme Court rejected the convicts' appeal and upheld the death sentence of the 4 who had been charged in the murder. The convicts exercised their right to file a review petition to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court rejected the review petition in July 2018. The gang rape incident led to widespread protests in Delhi and in many other places in India, in spite of the police arresting the culprits quickly. Incidentally, the protests in India sparked protests across South Asia. Marches and rallies took place in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. The demonstrators, who came from all walks of life but mostly among the youth, wanted the death penalty to be meted out to the criminals. The protesters in Delhi turned violent and clashed with the security forces. The government was initially high-handed, but ultimately it was forced to climb down. The government appointed a three-member judicial committee on December 22, 2012. It was headed by J.S. Verma, a former Chief Justice of India and an eminent jurist, and was asked to recommend amendments to the criminal law so as to provide for quicker trial and greater punishment for criminals accused of committing sexual assault against women. In this report submitted in January 2013, the committee was critical of the government, the police, and even the public for its apathy. It identified failure of governance as the fundamental cause for sexual crime. The committee made recommendations on laws related to rape, sexual harassment, trafficking, child sexual abuse, medical examination of victims, police, electoral, and educational reforms. The committee did not recommend the death penalty for rapists. It suggested a range of prison sentences from 7 years to life for different situations arising from rape and gang rape. Recognizing the need to curb all forms of sexual offense, the committee recommended suitable punishments for acid attacks and trafficking. It made it incumbent on the police to register every complaint of rape. It called for the police to be sensitized and trained to handle sexual assault cases appropriately. Civil societies, it said, should report every case of rape that came to its knowledge. It wanted all marriages to be registered. Under the Indian Penal Code, though sexual intercourse without consent is prohibited, an exception is made for sexual intercourse without consent within marriage. The committee recommended that there should be no such exception to marital rape. Besides suggesting time-bound trials for rape cases and the need for stringent punishment for all forms of sexual harassment, including stalking and groping, the committee also called for a review of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act (AFSPA) in conflict areas so that sexual offences by those in forces are brought under ordinary criminal law. The panel strongly recommended that the law enforcement agencies do not become tools at the hands of political masters. It pointed out that the members of the police force must understand their accountability is only to the law and to none else in the discharge of their duty. The committee also observed that the primary responsibility of the judiciary is to enforce fundamental rights. It called upon the judiciary to be vigilant. Calling for reforms to deal with criminalization of politics, the committee suggested that a candidate be disqualified from participating in the electoral process for sexual offences and that filing of a charge sheet and cognizance by the court should be sufficient for disqualification of the candidate. The committee wanted educational facilities to be provided by the state to the homeless and abandoned children. In February 2013, the government promulgated an ordinance amending the Indian Penal Code, the Indian Evidence Act, the Code of Criminal Procedure, and the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act in the matters relating to sexual offences. In March 2013, the Criminal Law Amendment Act was passed by Parliament to replace the ordinance. Several new sections were inserted in the existing laws to define and bring within the ambit of law such offences as acid attack which would attract a 10-year jail term extendable to life imprisonment or fine, or both sexual harassment with punishment of imprisonment ranging from 1 year to 3 years, fine, or both voyeurism punishable with imprisonment from 3 years to 7 years, stalking punishable with imprisonment of 1 year to 5 years, and gang rape punishable with imprisonment up to 20 years, extendable to life imprisonment. The age of consent has been increased from 16 years to 18 years. Repeat offences in certain cases have been made punishable with life imprisonment or death. Besides, a quick trial and conviction is called for in cases of rape. The law has been criticized mainly for not bringing marital rape within its ambit and for doing away with general neutrality in the cases of sexual offences and rape because it recognizes these offences only against women. In 2013, the government pushed through the National Food Security Act and the Right to Food Act. This was aimed at providing subsidized food grains to the beneficiaries of the target public distribution system. though it was pointed out that this kind of distribution may not reach the targeted population due to the corrupt and inefficient functioning of the public distribution system. NIC did not favor the idea of cash transfers food coupons. As one critic has observed, the contribution of the NAC to the agenda of inclusive growth was to ensure that inclusiveness was to be through patronage and protection rather than promotion of livelihood and employment opportunities for the poor. Clearly, the government faced some difficulties in reconciling its own priorities with those of the NAC space venture to Mars. Amidst all the negative aspects that occupied the political discussion, it was heartening to watch the success of Indian space scientists. In November 2013, the first interplanetary mission of the Indian Space Research Organization (ISRO), officially called the Mars Orbiter Mission and popularly known as Mangalyaan, was launched. On September 24, 2014, India's space agency became the fourth agency to have launched a spacecraft that was successful in reaching Mars orbit after the Russian, American, and the European space agencies. What is more, India became the first country to have succeeded in reaching Mars in its very first attempt and at a remarkably low cost. Corruption charges and Lokpal Act. The UPA government in its second term could also be credited with having got the Lokpal and Lokayuktas bill passed in December 2013, but here too it was compelled by circumstances to do so. The second term of the UPA government was fraught with allegations of corruption against it. There was a controversy over the allocation of the 2G and 3G spectrum telecom licenses, which were alleged to have been given away at very low rates. In 2010, the Comptroller and Auditor General reports seemed to confirm this. Then came the Commonwealth Games scandal with reports of huge sums of money changing hands for the procurement of contracts for various infrastructure projects. While the 2G 3G scam could be laid at the doors of an ally of the Congress, the Commonwealth Games scam led to a Congress minister. The report of the Comptroller and Auditor General in 2012 charged that coal block allocations had led to a loss to the Exchequer because the allocations were based on favoritism. This report actually cast an aspersion on Manmohan Singh's reputation, which had always been that of a clean politician, as the allocations had been made when the coal portfolio was with him 2006 to 2009. The corruption stories were extensively covered and debated on the numerous television channels and brought the subject to a larger number of people. Anti-corruption movements became prominent in 2011. Anna Hazare, a well-known social worker from Ralegaon Siddhi village in Maharashtra, came to Delhi in April 2011 and sat on a 12-day fast to protest against the corruption in government and the failure to tighten anti-corruption legislation. His specific demand was that a Lokpal be established. Many activists joined him in the protest. India Against Corruption was an organization created to support Anna Hazare in his efforts. One of its main founders was Arvind Kejriwal, a Magsaysay Award winner and an activist for the right to information movement. Many of its members were prominent persons in public life, lawyers, civil servants, and academicians. Large numbers of people, including celebrities, came out to support Anna Hazare, and the media coverage added to the importance of the event. The 2011 movement was significant in Indian political history in that it provided people the opportunity to express frustration. Most people had experience of having had to bribe officials and politicians for getting even legitimate work done. A series of demonstrations and protests against official corruption took place across India. The government seemed to be rattled by the protests and responded by announcing that it would set up a committee to hammer out a Lokpal bill. It said that committee would have 5 cabinet ministers and 5 persons nominated by India Against Corruption. Anna Hazare broke his fast and expressed the belief that the bill would be passed before Independence Day of that year. The committee, however, failed in its effort as there was deep distrust between the government representatives and the activists, and they could not agree on some major aspects. Soon there was another protest meeting, this time led by the yoga guru Baba Ramdev, demanding the repatriation of unaccounted money from Swiss and other foreign banks. Though he was not like Anna Hazare in that he had political ambitions, he was considered close to the BJP. He had a large following. Once again, there were large numbers joining in the protest. The government came down hard on the protesters after its efforts at the conciliation failed. Ramdev was ordered to stay out of Delhi. The Lokpal bill approved by the government in July 2011 was rejected by the activists on the ground that it could exclude several high functionaries from the ambit of Lokpal's jurisdiction. Anna Hazare declared that he would once again go on fast in the cause of a better Lokpal bill. Now a fiasco occurred with the government arresting him. Anna Hazare willingly went to jail and refused to bail and began his fast right there, putting the officials in a quandary. The streets of Delhi filled with protesters supporting him. The government had no option but to release him. Anna Hazare continued his fast at the Ramlila grounds. A throng of supporters gathered to express solidarity. The protests were on the whole non-partisan, with most protesters unwilling to let political parties make use of them in pushing political agendas. The movement was nowhere near Jayaprakash Narayan's Sampurna Kranti Total Revolution agitation of 1974 to 77. The difference was that the protest in 2011 was held in full media glare after the era of 24/7 television had arrived. The government failed in its efforts to move Anna Hazare from his position. In the end, towards the end of August, Parliament passed a resolution moved by the then Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee that a revised Lokpal bill would be passed, which would meet the main demands made by Anna Hazare and his supporters. This led to Anna Hazare breaking his fast. The Anna Hazare protest did not succeed in making the government to immediately legislate on the Lokpal. Also, the supporters split on the issue of forming a political party. Anna Hazare and some of the protesters were not ready to enter the political arena. However, Arvind Kejriwal was in favor of entering politics. Kejriwal and some others formed the Aam Aadmi Party AAP on November 26, 2012. It was going to create history by getting a stupendous majority in the Delhi Assembly elections of 2015, decimating the Congress and reducing the BJP to a few seats. The Lokpal and Lokayukta's bill was first tabled in the Lok Sabha in December 2011 and after being passed was tabled in Rajya Sabha in the same month. The vote failed to take place after a marathon debate. In May 2012, the bill was referred to a select committee of the Rajya Sabha. In December 2013, it was passed by both the houses of parliament. On January 1, 2014, it received assent from the President Pranab Mukherjee, who had been elected President of India in 2012. The Lokpat and Lokayukta Act 2013 mandates the establishment of Lokpal for the Union and Lokayukta for states to inquire into allegations of corruption against certain public functionaries and for related matters. The Act extends to the whole of India, including Jammu and Kashmir, and is applicable to public servants within and outside India. The Act laid out the organization, jurisdiction, and powers of the Lokpal. The jurisdiction of the Lokpal will include the Prime Minister. If, however, a complaint is filed against the Prime Minister, certain conditions will apply. The Lokpal will also have jurisdiction over ministers and MPs, but not in the matter of anything said in Parliament or a vote given there. The Lokpal's jurisdiction will cover all categories of public servants. The Lokpal's own members have been included in the definition of public servant. Critics have found two important shortcomings in the Lokpal Act. The Lokpal was not made a constitutional body, and the judiciary was excluded from the ambit of the Lokpal. Conditions before general election. When the country went to the general elections in April-May 2014, much of the positive achievements of the UPA in its second term was relegated to the background, while the corruption allegations remained in the most people's minds. The rural sector faced problems. Farmers committed suicide on a large scale, mainly due to indebtedness, crop failure, drought, and socio-economic factors. Farmer distress did not seem to have come down, even though the UPA government in 2008 had announced a loan waiver of 70,000 crore. The UPA government rolled out several socio-economic programs, but their implementation was poor in most cases. There was also dissatisfaction on a more general level. Common people were hit by price rise and unemployment, not to say lack of development. There was what analysts called a policy paralysis in the second term of the UPA that led to stagnation on the development front, and many progressive economic ideas remained on paper. The fiscal deficit and a sharp downslide of the rupee led to instability in the economy. It did not seem as if the UPA was coming back to power in 2014. Like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you.